Captain Sarah Chen pressed her face against the cold viewport of the exploration vessel Horizon's Edge. The sight before her made her breath catch in her throat. The planet Arvenis hung in space like a dying ember, its once vibrant blue oceans now a murky gray, and its green continents faded to brown patches scattered across the surface. "How long do they have?" Sarah asked without turning from the window. Dr. Marcus Webb, the team's xenobiologist, checked his readings for the third time in 10 minutes. His hands shook slightly as he adjusted the scanner. "According to our instruments, maybe 6 months. The atmospheric processors are failing faster than we calculated." Sarah closed her eyes. 6 months. That was all the time left for an entire civilization that had thrived for over 10,000 years. The Arvenians had built cities that touched the clouds and created art so beautiful it could make humans weep. Now their world was dying, poisoned by the very technology that had once made them powerful. The communication system crackled to life. A gentle voice spoke in accented English, learned painstakingly over the past year since first contact. "Human vessel, this is Elder Zephyr of the High Council. We welcome you back to our world." Sarah picked up the communicator. "Elder Zephyr, this is Captain Chen. We've brought the equipment you requested. Our engineers are ready to help." There was a pause. When the Elder spoke again, his voice carried a weight that seemed to press down on everyone in the ship's bridge. "Captain, we must speak honestly. Your people have traveled far to help us, but we fear it may be too late. Our atmospheric cleaners are shutting down one by one. Each day, the air becomes harder to breathe." Engineer Lisa Park looked up from her workstation. She had been studying the Arvenian technology for months, trying to understand their complex environmental systems. "Captain, we might be able to extend their time if we can reach the central processing station. But the radiation levels around it are deadly, even for us." Sarah nodded. She had known this mission would be dangerous when the United Earth Council had approved it. The Arvenians had made contact with humanity just as their world began to die. Their message had been simple: they were not asking to be saved, but they wanted their knowledge and culture to survive. They had chosen humans as the inheritors of their legacy. The ship's pilot, Commander Rick Torres, activated the landing sequence. Approaching the capital city of Luminar. The landing pad is still operational. Through the viewport, Sarah watched as they descended toward the planet's surface. Luminar had once been a marvel of architecture, with buildings that seemed to grow from the ground like crystal trees. Now, many of the structures were dark, their power systems failing along with everything else. As the ship touched down, Sarah could see figures waiting on the landing pad. The Arvenians looked similar to humans but were taller and more slender, with skin that had a subtle luminescent quality. Their large eyes reflected intelligence and sadness in equal measure. Elder Zephyr stood at the front of the greeting party. His silver robes fluttered in the thin wind, and his ceremonial staff glowed with a soft blue light. Despite the dire circumstances, he maintained the dignity that the Arvenians were known for. The airlock hissed open, and Sarah stepped onto Arvenian soil for the second time in her life. The air tasted metallic and made her lungs burn slightly, even through the breathing apparatus she wore. The gravity was lighter than Earth's, making each step feel like a small bounce. Captain Chen, Elder Zephyr approached with open arms in the traditional Arvenian greeting. "Your return brings hope to our hearts, even in these dark times." Sarah accepted the greeting, feeling the warmth of the Elder's hands through her gloves. "We've brought everything we could, Elder. Our engineers and scientists are ready to work around the clock." Dr. Webb emerged from the ship carrying cases of medical supplies and research equipment. Behind him came Engineer Park and her team, loaded down with tools and spare parts that might help repair the failing atmospheric systems. Elder Zephyr gestured toward the city. "Come, we have prepared quarters for your team. But first, there is something you must see. Something that will help you understand why saving our knowledge is more important than saving our lives." They walked through streets that had once bustled with activity. Now, only a few Arvenians moved about, their faces covered with breathing masks. The buildings around them told the story of a sophisticated civilization. Gardens that had once flourished between the structures were now withered, their bioluminescent plants dim and dying. Our ancestors arrived on this world as refugees, Elder Zephyr explained as they walked. Their home planet had become uninhabitable due to war and environmental destruction. They swore that Arvenis would never suffer the same fate. Sarah looked at the dying gardens and felt a chill that had nothing to do with the thin air. What happened? Your people seem to have such advanced environmental technology. Pride, the elder said simply. We became so confident in our ability to control nature that we forgot to respect it. Our atmospheric processors were designed to create perfect weather, perfect air, perfect everything. But we built too many, pushed them too hard. Now they're breaking down faster than we can fix them. They reached the center of the city, where a massive building rose like a mountain of crystal and metal. This was the archive, the repository of all Arvenian knowledge and culture. Even in the dying light of the sun, it glowed with an inner radiance that took Sarah's breath away. Inside these walls, Elder Zephyr said, we have preserved 10,000 years of discovery, art, philosophy, and science. Poems that can heal broken hearts, mathematical equations that unlock the secrets of space travel, and medical techniques that could extend human life by centuries. Dr. Webb stepped forward, his scientific curiosity overcoming his sadness about the situation. How much of it can we transfer to our systems? All of it, the elder replied. We have been preparing for months. Every piece of knowledge, every work of art, every historical record has been converted into formats your computers can understand. But the transfer will take time, and time is what we lack. Engineer Park had been studying the atmospheric readings on her portable scanner. Captain, the air quality here is worse than in the outer settlements. If the central processor fails completely, this area will become uninhabitable within weeks, not months. Elder Zephyr nodded gravely. Which is why we must begin immediately. Captain Chen, I know this is a great burden to place on your people. You did not have to come here. You could have left us to face our end alone. Sarah looked into the elder's large, expressive eyes. She saw acceptance there, but also hope. That's not who we are, elder. When someone needs help, humans answer the call. It's what makes us human. The elder smiled, the first genuine expression of joy Sarah had seen from any Arvenian since their arrival. This is why we chose your species to carry our legacy. Not because you are the most advanced or the most powerful, but because you care about others, even strangers from distant worlds. As they entered the archive, Sarah was struck by the beauty of the interior. The walls were lined with crystalline storage units that pulsed gently with stored information. Holographic displays showed complex equations, artistic masterpieces, and historical events. The air inside was cleaner, filtered by the building's independent life support systems. We have divided our knowledge into categories, Elder Zephyr explained, leading them to a central control station. Science and technology, arts and culture, history and philosophy, and what we call the heart archives. Heart archives? Sarah asked. The personal stories of our people. Love letters, children's drawings, family memories. The things that make a civilization more than just facts and figures. The elder's voice grew soft. We believe that to truly understand a people, you must know not just what they accomplished, but who they were. Dr. Webb was already at work, connecting human data storage devices to the Arvenian systems. The interfaces are compatible. This is incredible engineering. We should be able to complete the transfer, but it's going to take several days. Engineer Park pulled Sarah aside. Captain, I've been thinking about the atmospheric processors. If we could get to the main control center and do a complete system restart, we might be able to buy them more time. Maybe even stabilize the environment permanently. Sarah felt a spark of hope. What would that involve? A trip to the northern wastes, where the central processor is located. The radiation there is off the charts, but our suits might protect us long enough to do what needs to be done. It's risky, but it might be their only chance. Elder Zephyr had overheard the conversation. Captain, the journey to the northern wastes is extremely dangerous. many of our own people have died trying to reach the central processor. We cannot ask you to risk your lives for a chance that may not succeed." Sarah looked around at the archive. At the glowing walls filled the transport vehicle bounced violently as it crossed the rough terrain of the northern wastes. Captain Sarah Chen gripped the safety rail and watched the radiation detector climb higher with each mile they traveled. Beside her, Engineer Lisa Park checked and rechecked the environmental suits they would need to wear once they reached the central processing station. "Radiation levels are already at the edge of what our suits can handle," Park reported over the comm system. "Once we're inside the facility, we'll have maybe 2 hours before we risk permanent damage." Commander Rick Torres, who was driving the specially shielded vehicle, pointed ahead through the reinforced windshield. "There it is. The Central Atmospheric Processing Station." Sarah stared at the massive structure rising from the wasteland ahead of them. It looked like a technological mountain, with towers and pipes reaching toward the gray sky. Steam and strange colored gases vented from various points along its surface. The entire complex was surrounded by a shimmering barrier that she knew was deadly radiation. "It's bigger than I expected," Dr. Marcus Webb said from the back seat. He had insisted on coming despite the danger, arguing that his knowledge of Arvenian biology might be crucial if they encountered any of the automated systems. Elder Zephyr's voice crackled over the radio from the capital city. "Captain Chen, the facility was built to be operated remotely, but the communication systems failed 3 months ago. You will need to access the main control room manually. The entrance is on the eastern side, marked with our traditional symbols." Sarah could hear the worry in the elder's voice. Back in Luminar, the situation was getting worse by the hour. Another processing station had gone offline during the night, and several Arvenians had been hospitalized with severe breathing problems. They were running out of time. The vehicle stopped at the edge of the radiation barrier. Torres engaged the parking systems and turned to face his team. "Once we put on those suits, we're committed." "Everyone sure about this?" Park was already pulling on her protective gear. "The suit's power cells will last 3 hours maximum. After that, we're on borrowed time." She looked at each team member seriously. "If something goes wrong, if anyone gets separated, don't try to be a hero. Get out and save yourselves." Dr. Webb adjusted his suit's biosensors. "I've been studying the Arvenian medical data. Their physiology is more sensitive to radiation than ours. If this place is dangerous for us, it would be instantly fatal for them." Sarah sealed her helmet and checked her oxygen supply. Through the suit's visor, she could see the processing station more clearly. It was beautiful in a terrifying way, like a mechanical aurora dancing with deadly energy. "Everyone ready? Let's go save a world." They left the safety of the vehicle and walked toward the facility entrance. The ground beneath their feet was cracked and scarred, with patches of crystallized sand where the radiation had been so intense it had fused the soil into glass. Strange plants grew in some areas, twisted and glowing with unnatural colors. "The ecosystem here has mutated," Webb observed, kneeling to examine one of the glowing plants. "These species have adapted to the radiation, but they're nothing like the original Arvenian flora." Park consulted her scanner and the facility blueprints. "The entrance should be just ahead. According to these plans, the main control room is 15 levels down, in the most heavily shielded part of the complex." They found the entrance marked with intricate Arvenian symbols that seemed to pulse with their own light. The heavy doors were partially open, revealing a dark corridor beyond. Sarah led the way, her suit's lights cutting through the gloom. Inside the facility, the walls were lined with pipes and conduits that hummed with energy. The air itself seemed to shimmer with radiation, and their detectors clicked constantly. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows as they made their way deeper into the complex. "The elevators are non-functional," Torres reported after checking a control panel. "We'll have to use the maintenance shafts to get down to the control room." They found an access shaft and began the slow descent. The shaft was barely wide enough for their bulky environmental suits, and several times they had to squeeze through narrow spaces. All around them, the facility groaned and hummed as its automated systems continued their failing attempts to process the planet's atmosphere. I'm reading massive energy fluctuations, Park warned as they reached the 10th level. Whatever's happening down there, it's building towards some kind of critical event. Dr. Webb's biosensors were going crazy. The radiation levels are spiking. We need to move faster. They pushed through the remaining levels, their suit alarms growing louder with each step. By the time they reached the main control room, Sarah's suit was warning her that she had less than an hour of safe exposure time remaining. The control room was a marvel of Arvenian technology. Crystalline displays covered the walls, showing real-time data from atmospheric processing stations across the planet. But many of the displays were dark, and those that remained active showed readings that made Sarah's heart sink. It's worse than we thought, Park said, studying the main console. The network isn't just failing, it's in a feedback loop. Each station that goes offline puts more strain on the remaining ones, which makes them fail faster. Sarah looked at the complex controls, covered in Arvenian symbols and geometric patterns that hurt her eyes to stare at directly. Can you make sense of these systems? Park was already at work, using a translation device to interpret the symbols. I think so. The Arvenians designed this to be intuitive, but their intuition is very different from ours. She paused, studying a particular section of the console. Wait. I think I understand. This isn't just a control system, it's almost like a living organism. The atmospheric processors are designed to learn and adapt. So what went wrong? Torres asked, keeping watch at the entrance to the control room. Webb had been examining the biomonitoring systems. I think the processors became too smart. They started optimizing the atmosphere beyond what the planet could naturally support. When the system reached its limits, it couldn't adapt back to sustainable levels. Park's fingers flew over the controls, trying to access the core programming. If that's true, then we need to teach the system to accept imperfection. To stop trying to create the perfect atmosphere and just maintain a livable one. Alarms suddenly began blaring throughout the facility. The radiation readings spiked even higher, and Sarah could see sparks flying from some of the control panels. What's happening? She shouted over the noise. Cascade failure. Park replied, working frantically at the controls. 3 more processing stations just went offline simultaneously. The remaining ones are overloading. Elder Zephyr's voice came over the radio, barely audible through the interference. Captain Chen, we're reading massive energy surges from your location. The northern processing station is showing critical warnings. Sarah realized with growing horror that they might be standing at the center of an explosion that could devastate half the planet. Park, how long do we have? Maybe 20 minutes before this whole facility goes critical, Park answered, sweat running down her face inside her helmet. But I think I can stop it. I need to manually reset each processing station in the network, one by one. Dr. Webb looked at his radiation readings. Lisa, that's going to take at least an hour. Our suits won't protect us that long. Park paused in her work and looked at each of her teammates. Then, you need to leave. Get back to the vehicle and contact the ship. I'll stay and finish the reset sequence. Absolutely not, Sarah said immediately. We don't leave people behind. Captain, be logical, Park replied, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. One life versus an entire civilization. It's not even a choice. Torres stepped forward. There has to be another way. What if we work in shifts? Take turns at the controls? Park shook her head. The reset sequence has to be completed without interruption. If it stops halfway through, the feedback loop will resume, and we'll lose our only chance. Sarah looked around the control room, her mind racing. The displays showed the planet's atmospheric systems failing in real time. Each red warning light represented millions of Arvenians whose air was becoming more poisonous by the minute. Wait, Webb said suddenly. What if we don't have to stay in this room? Lisa, can you program the reset sequence into the computer and let it run automatically? Park examined the controls more carefully. Maybe. The Arvenian computers are incredibly sophisticated. If I can create a stable program loop, it might work. She began typing rapidly on the crystalline interface. But I'll need time to write the code, and I'll need to stay here to monitor it until the sequence begins. The facility shook around them as another energy surge rippled through the systems. Warning lights flashed in patterns that seemed to follow some kind of alien logic. "Do it," Sarah ordered. "We'll give you as much time as we can." Park worked with intense concentration while the others kept watch on the various warning systems. The radiation levels continued to climb, and Sarah could see that her suit's protection was nearly exhausted. "There," Park announced finally. "The program is loaded. It'll take about 30 minutes to reset all the remaining processing stations, then another hour for them to synchronize and stabilize." "Will it work?" Torres asked. "I don't know," Park admitted. "But it's the best chance we've got." She activated the program, and immediately the control room filled with new sounds as the automated systems took over. Displays began showing progress indicators as the computer worked through the reset sequence. "Time to go," Sarah said, but as they turned toward the exit, alarms began blaring even louder. "The main power core is destabilizing," Webb reported, reading from an emergency display. "The reset sequence is drawing more power than the facility can provide." Park looked stricken. "I didn't account for the power requirements. The program will abort in a few minutes unless someone manually regulates the power flow." They all understood what this meant. Someone had to stay behind to keep the systems running, knowing that the radiation exposure would likely be fatal. Sarah stepped toward the power control station. "I'll do it." "No, Captain," Park said firmly. "This is my area of expertise. I'm the only one who really understands these systems." Before anyone could argue, Torres had moved to the power controls. "Sorry, but I outrank both of you when it comes to experience with dangerous situations. I'm staying." Dr. Webb put his hand on Torres's shoulder. "Rick, you've got a family back on Earth. Lisa has the technical knowledge, but I understand the biological systems. I should be the one." Sarah looked at her team, realizing that each of them was prepared to sacrifice their life for the mission. It was exactly what she would expect from human beings faced with the chance to save an entire world. "Nobody's staying behind," she said with sudden determination. "Park, how much power regulation does the system actually need?" "Constant monitoring for about 45 minutes, Park replied. "Small adjustments to prevent overloads." Sarah smiled grimly. "Then, we'll do it in shifts. 15 minutes each, then get out and let our suits recover before the next person takes over." It was dangerous, pushing their radiation exposure beyond safe limits, but it might just work. They quickly organized their rotation schedule, with Park going first since she understood the controls best. As the automated reset sequence continued its work, the facility around them began to change. The chaotic energy fluctuations smoothed out, and the emergency alarms gradually quieted. On the displays, they could see processing stations across the planet beginning to respond to the new programming. The plan worked. Each team member took their turn at the power controls, then retreated to the least radioactive part of the room to let their suits' protective systems recover. It was a desperate gamble with their lives, but gradually the atmospheric processing network stabilized. When the reset sequence finally completed, they were all beyond their suits' safe exposure limits, but they were alive. On the main display, green lights began appearing as processing stations across Arvenis came back online, no longer trying to create perfect conditions but simply maintaining breathable air. "We did it," Park whispered, her voice hoarse with exhaustion and radiation sickness. "The feedback loop is broken. The planet should stabilize now." Elder Zephyr's voice came over the radio, filled with emotion. "Captain Chen, we're reading normal atmospheric conditions for the first time in months. The air in the capital is clearing. You've saved our world." As they made their way back through the facility, Sarah felt a mix of triumph and worry. They had succeeded in their primary mission, but the radiation exposure had taken its toll. All 4 team members would need immediate medical treatment, and she wasn't sure they would all survive the journey back to their ship. But, as they emerged into the wasteland around the processing facility, Sarah saw something that took her breath away. In the distance, the strange, mutated plants were already beginning to change, their unnatural glow fading as the radiation levels dropped. The planet was healing itself, just as it had been designed to do. 3 months had passed since the mission to the northern wastes, and Captain Sarah Chen stood once again in the archive of Luminar. But, this time, everything was different. Sunlight streamed through windows that had been sealed for years, and the air was clean and breathable without mechanical assistance. The sound of children playing echoed from the streets outside. Dr. Marcus Webb approached her, walking slowly but steadily. The radiation treatment had saved his life, though he would carry the effects of their exposure for years to come. The final medical reports are in, Sarah. We're all going to be fine. Some genetic damage, but nothing the Earth medical teams can't handle. Sarah nodded, relief flooding through her. Commander Torres and Engineer Park had already returned to Earth for advanced treatment, but they were expected to make full recoveries. The sacrifice had been worth it. Elder Zephyr joined them at the central console where the last of the Arvenian knowledge was being transferred to human storage systems. His silver robe seemed brighter now, reflecting the renewed hope that filled the city. Captain Chen, in 3 days we will have completed the transfer of our entire cultural archive. Every poem, every scientific discovery, every piece of art our people have created over 10,000 years. What will you do with the originals? Sarah asked, watching as holographic displays showed the progress of the massive data transfer. They will remain here, in the archive, the elder replied. Arvenis lives again, and our knowledge belongs on our world. But, now it also belongs to the stars, carried by your people to worlds we will never see. Dr. Webb had been studying the latest atmospheric readings. The processing network is performing even better than we hoped. The planet's ecosystem is recovering faster than anyone predicted. Through the archive's windows, Sarah could see the evidence of that recovery. Gardens that had been withered and dying were now bursting with new growth. The bioluminescent plants that were native to Arvenis were beginning to glow again, creating patterns of light that danced across the buildings at night. A young Arvenian approached their group, her large eyes bright with excitement. She carried a small crystalline device that pulsed with soft colors. Elder Zephyr, the children's art project is complete. We wanted to give this to the humans before they leave. Elder Zephyr smiled and accepted the device. This contains drawings and stories created by our youngest citizens. They wanted to share their vision of friendship between our peoples. Sarah took the device carefully, feeling its warm surface tingle against her fingers. We'll treasure this. And we'll make sure human children learn about Arvenian culture from these stories. The young Arvenian looked up at Sarah with wonder. Is it true that humans come from a world with only one sun? And that your oceans are blue instead of silver? That's right, Sarah said, kneeling down to the child's level. And someday, when you're older, maybe you'll visit Earth and see it for yourself. The child's eyes grew even wider. We could do that? Travel between worlds like in the old stories? Elder Zephyr placed a gentle hand on the child's shoulder. Now that our world is safe, we can dream of such things again. Perhaps our peoples will explore the stars together. As the day progressed, Sarah found herself walking through the restored city with a mixture of joy and sadness. Joy at seeing the Arvenians thriving once more, but sadness because her mission was nearly complete, and soon she would have to leave this remarkable world behind. She stopped at a memorial garden that had been planted to honor those Arvenians who had died during the atmospheric crisis. The flowers here were especially beautiful, with petals that seemed to capture and hold starlight. An inscription in both Arvenian and English read, "Their light continues in the knowledge they preserved." Engineer Park's voice crackled over her communicator. Sarah had almost forgotten that her teammate was calling in from Earth. Captain, I wanted you to know that the Earth Science Council has approved the construction of 3 new research facilities dedicated to studying Arvenian technology. We're going to learn so much from their discoveries. That's wonderful news, Lisa, Sarah replied. How are you feeling? Better every day. The doctors say I'll be cleared for active duty within 6 months. I can't wait to get back out there. Park's enthusiasm was infectious, even across the vast distance of space. Sarah, I've been thinking about what we accomplished. We didn't just save a world. We created a bridge between two civilizations. Sarah looked up at the sky, where Earth's sun was visible as a distant star. I think you're right. This is just the beginning. Later that evening, Sarah attended a ceremony in the Grand Hall of the Archive. The entire Arvenian High Council was present, along with representatives from every major city on the planet. The hall was illuminated by thousands of bioluminescent plants arranged in intricate patterns that told the story of the crisis and recovery. Elder Zephyr stood at the center of the hall, his ceremonial staff glowing brighter than Sarah had ever seen it. Friends, we gather tonight to mark the completion of a great work. Our knowledge, our culture, and our history have been preserved for all time. But, more than that, we have gained something precious: friendship with the humans of Earth. The gathered Arvenians responded with a harmonic sound that was part song, part prayer. The bioluminescent plants responded to their voices, pulsing in rhythm with the music. Sarah felt tears running down her cheeks as the beauty of the moment overwhelmed her. Captain Chen, Elder Zephyr called out. Please join me. Sarah walked to the center of the hall, feeling hundreds of large, kind eyes watching her. The elder raised his staff, and the glow spread outward, touching every plant in the hall until the entire space was filled with gentle light. On behalf of all Arvenians, I present you with this. The elder handed her a small crystal pendant. It contains a living seed from our most sacred tree. Plant it on Earth, and it will grow, carrying a piece of Arvenis to your world forever. Sarah accepted the pendant, feeling the warmth of life pulsing within the crystal. I'm honored, Elder. This gift will be treasured by all humanity. The ceremony continued with presentations of art, music, and poetry that celebrated the friendship between the two species. Sarah was amazed by the creativity and beauty of Arvenian culture, and she understood why preserving it had been so important. Dr. Webb joined her as the formal ceremony concluded. I've been analyzing the cultural exchange data. Did you know that human and Arvenian art styles are starting to influence each other already? The artists from both worlds are creating hybrid works that neither species could have imagined alone. That's the real treasure, Sarah said, watching as Arvenian children played with human visitors in the hall's gardens. Not just preserving knowledge, but creating new knowledge together. The next morning, Sarah stood in the command center of the Horizon's Edge as her crew prepared for departure. The ship's cargo holds were filled with crystalline storage devices containing the complete archive of Arvenian civilization. It was a responsibility that she took very seriously. Commander Torres, who had returned to active duty just in time for the departure, ran through the final departure checklist. All systems green, Captain. The Arvenians have given us updated star charts for the journey home. Apparently, they know some shortcuts we missed on the way here. Engineer Park's voice came over the communication system from Earth. Captain, the reception committee is ready on this end. The entire scientific community is waiting to begin studying the archive. Sarah looked out at the planet Arvenis one last time. The world was green and blue again, its oceans sparkling and its continents covered with thriving cities. Ships moved through the atmosphere, carrying goods and people between settlements. It was hard to believe that just months ago, this had been a dying world. Elder Zephyr appeared on the main viewer, speaking from the archive. Captain Chen, your ship carries more than just our knowledge. It carries our hopes, our dreams, and our love for the universe. We know that in your hands, our legacy will flourish among the stars. Elder, it's been the greatest honor of my life to know your people, Sarah replied. This isn't goodbye. Humanity and Arvenis will continue to learn from each other for generations to come. As the Horizon's Edge lifted off from the planet's surface, Sarah watched through the viewport as Arvenis grew smaller in the distance. But she wasn't sad. The world below was alive and thriving, and the knowledge they carried would benefit both civilizations for centuries to come. Dr. Webb joined her at the viewport, holding a datapad with preliminary analysis of some Arvenian medical techniques. Sarah, look at this. Their healing methods could revolutionize human medicine. We could extend human lifespan by decades, maybe centuries. And their environmental management systems could help us restore damaged ecosystems on Earth, Sarah added. The benefits go both ways. 6 months later, Sarah stood in the newly constructed Arvenis Research Center on Earth, watching as scientists from both worlds work side by side through holographic communication links. The Arvenian knowledge had already led to breakthroughs in energy production, medical treatment, and environmental restoration. But the real victory was visible in the greenhouse attached to the research center. There, the sacred tree from Arvenis had taken root in earth soil. Its bioluminescent leaves glowed softly in the evening light, and its roots had begun to spread, adapting to its new home while maintaining its essential Arvenian nature. Commander Torres found her there as she often did, tending to the tree and thinking about the friends they had made on a distant world. "Any word from Arvenis today?" Elder Zephyr sent a message this morning, Sarah replied, adjusting the tree's nutrient systems. "They're planning their first interstellar expedition. A cultural exchange mission to Earth." Torres smiled. "Think they'll like our planet?" Sarah looked up at Earth's single moon rising in the evening sky, then back at the glowing tree that represented the friendship between two worlds. "I think they'll love it. After all, it's got something Arvenis never had." "What's that?" "Room for both of us to grow together." As night fell over the research center, the Arvenian tree pulsed with gentle light, its radiance mixing with the stars above. In that glow, Sarah could see the future, human and Arvenian ships exploring the galaxy together, sharing knowledge and friendship across the vast distances of space. The last radiance of Arvenis had not faded after all. Instead, it had become the first light of a new age of cooperation between the stars. And, in research centers, schools, and homes across both worlds, children learned about courage, sacrifice, and the incredible things that could be accomplished when different peoples chose to help each other instead of turning away. The story of Arvenis had become more than just a tale of survival. It had become proof that the universe was vast enough for all its children to thrive together, sharing their gifts and growing stronger through friendship and mutual respect. And, somewhere among the stars, new worlds waited to join that growing family of civilizations, each adding their own radiance to the light that would guide them all toward a brighter future. "If there's even a small chance we can save your world, we have to try." The elder's eyes filled with tears that glowed faintly in the archive's light. "Captain, your courage honors us all. But, promise me this, if the mission to the northern wastes fails, you will still complete the transfer of our knowledge. Our civilization may die, but our legacy must not." Sarah nodded solemnly. "I promise, Elder. One way or another, the story of Arvenis will survive." As night fell over the dying world, the human team began their work in earnest. Dr. Webb and his assistants worked to catalog and transfer the scientific knowledge, while Engineer Park studied the atmospheric processor schematics, looking for any weakness they could exploit. Sarah stood on a balcony overlooking the city, watching the few lights that still twinkled in the darkness. Commander Torres joined her, offering a cup of coffee from their ship's supplies. "Think we can pull this off, Captain?" he asked quietly. Sarah took a sip of the hot coffee and let it warm her in the cold, thin air. "I don't know, Rick. But I know we have to try. These people trusted us with everything they are. We can't let them down." In the distance, a low rumble shook the ground. Another atmospheric processor had failed. Time was running out faster than anyone had expected. But, in the archive behind them, the work continued, humans and Arvenians laboring side by side to preserve the last radiance of a dying world.